when I'm in trouble and when I'm down as a consumer or a customer, and you come with a value proposition that delivers in a way that I wasn't expecting and I'm grateful for, I'm gonna become a more loyal customer over time.
You are listening to C-Suite Perspectives, a podcast by the Conference Board.
Welcome to C-Suite Perspectives, a signature series by the Conference Board. I'm Steve Odland, the CEO of the Conference Board and the host of this podcast series. And in today's discussion, we're going to discuss inflation and how it's impacting consumer spending. With me today is a marketing and inflation expert, Ivan Pollard, Center Leader of the Marketing and Communications Center at the Conference Board and the former CMO at General Mills and Coca-Cola. And Ivan, you are just the perfect person to have this conversation.
Well, it's not just the places I've been, it's what I've faced when I was there.
Well, and that's really an interesting point because we've been here before, haven't we, Ivan, in periods of high inflation and value issues over and over again.
Yeah, think late 80s, think late 90s, think the kind of the bubble bursting in 2008. This has happened before, and some reactions of the consumer are predictable and some are surprising.
Well, and there's a different reason each time. I mean, there's different economic cycles. We had a financial crisis. We had 9/11, a terrorist incident. But after each time, there are these gyrations to the economy. In this case, we had COVID, and we had a situation where there was a supply and demand imbalance created by, changes to the economy and people staying home and all of that. And whenever that happens, price is a function of supply and demand, and that's what's happened. We've had a period of rapid inflation.
Yeah, you look at, in fact, the latest inflation, the CPI, Consumer Price Index in July, was actually the lowest at 2.9% that we've had since March of 2021.
Yeah, and before that, we were running sub 2%, and we were in that kind of space for a long time, and so price increases were more like 2% a year or 1.5%. I mean, they were, and you can set a ruler on those price increases. Now it's been what? We're up 20-25% in some cases.
In some cases, let's just take eggs for instance, up 19.1% July year on year. So there are some markets, some sectors that are going harder and higher. But what's interesting is that very gradual price increase, it kind of taught people to fall into the habit of low price increases. And so when that habit is broken with big price increases, their reactions are quite interesting.
They are interesting. And eggs, a different issue. You certainly have the demand, some supply issue, but that's created a lot by the bird flu problems.
Exactly.
But whatever the issue is, we've had general grocery prices going up, and 20 to 25%, and that's hit households very, very hard.
Yeah, packaged food, for instance, up 13% year on year, and in general, the latest rise year on year is starting to cool a little bit, just into the 2.2% is what we called in July, and literally tomorrow August's numbers come out. But you're right, each sector, think food, think other sectors as well, they have their own unique issues, but of course the consumer has their issues, and one of the biggest ones is spending their money on the things that they need, spending their money on the things that they want, and not even having any money to spend. Yeah,
and this is not hitting the high-end demographics as hard because food and gas are pretty basic to existence, low on Maslow's hierarchy. And so when, people who are on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum are getting hit harder because those costs are a higher percentage of their total spending. And so this has been a complete and total burden. And I don't think that necessarily their income has kept pace here. So it has created a real compression for these poor people.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We've just done a little bit of a survey in the Consumer Confidence Index where we asked people a very interesting question, which is, over the last 12 months, as prices have increased, as companies have increased prices, to what extent has you being upset about those price rises changed your behaviours? And we looked at what happened with those with less income versus those who had more income, and there was some surprising results, actually.
Yeah, what'd you find?
So we looked at 18 different categories: packaged food, clothing, transport, medical, you name it, we looked at it. And across the average, those earning less than $50,000 a year in income, they actually, 26% of them had said that they were going to change their behavior. They were going to buy less, trade down, buy from somebody else, just buy less often. Interesting, across the same 18 categories, those earning 125 grand or more, 24% of them said that they were changing.
Still a big percentage.
Yeah.
So, but that's attitudinal. It's not necessarily behavioral. At the lower end, it's got to be behavioral because they don't have the money. So, but let's come back to how people are feeling about that. But you can't turn on the television today without hearing politicians say that the reason for this inflation is price gouging. Do you believe that?
Well, it'd be very unusual for me to actually state a view on what the politicians say.
No, but the price gouging.
But the price gouging, no, I don't actually believe it in general.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, because in all of the companies you've worked in, I've worked in, our members have worked in, you work in a competitive industry, and if you're too high priced, you get slaughtered.
Yeah. And if you get caught price gouging, you're out of business.
Well, it's illegal to begin with, but there are very few companies that are in that state. So it's really a reaction to supply and demand. I mean, grocers run on 2 cents on the dollar kind of margins. I think it's a little. I think people need to understand, and marketers need to understand, this isn't something that is driven by some change in corporate behavior. This is because of the environment. So therefore, what should they do about it? Because you still have this impression out there that
and the perception. It's what I think. One of the things that I'll just reiterate is I do think we all got accustomed to very small price increases. The market and the competition kept that kind of down. The ability to get into the market for new entrants, that barrier that we used to talk about, the barrier to entry. Maybe when I started in marketing in the early 1800s, that barrier to entry has disappeared. So competitive forces kept prices good. Consumers got used to it, and when, as you say, external events that we have no control over put the input costs up, prices were going to rise, and we got a bit of a reaction.
Okay, but you do have a situation here, whether, and I'm not trying to get into politics because we're totally nonpartisan at the conference board, but as a marketer or as a business leader, you have these pressures out there, these exogenous pressures that come from governments, they come from consumers as well, and it may not be factual, and it may not be fair, but they're out there. And part of what you've said is that, look, marketers need to be cognizant of all of these pressures and react accordingly.
Yeah, so when these pressures come for the consumer and they get slightly perturbed by even the perception of price rises, it means there's both an opportunity and a threat for all businesses, and this is where marketing, it's why it was created and it's why it thrives.
And it works.
If the mindset is there that I'm willing to change, then promote the hell out of your value proposition to capture those who are willing to change. And as I said, we've got, in general, 1 in 4 people saying, I'm up for reconsidering who I buy from.
So this could be existential for some brands if you don't do anything. You can't just stick your head in the sand and go, well, my supply chain costs have gone up, and so therefore I got a price and I can't do anything about it. Well, okay, if you take that attitude, it's not going to change consumers' view of things. So you've got to really start marketing.
Yeah, without doubt. So how do you find a way of offering promotional deals or creative solutions or just reiterating the value of your brand and why it's important? There is a communications job here as well, which is carefully explaining why prices have gone up. So those two things together, it means there's an opportunity, there's a volatility in the market where opportunity can be captured and also customers can be lost. And the one other thing that I'll tell you is that from the things that we've seen before, Steve, this is the issue now. There'll be a different issue 5 years from now, and if you've won a customer today and you do well at keeping them in 5 years' time, they'll have spent a lot of money with you, and pricing will no longer be the issue for them.
So, do you see any behavioral, well, there's attitudinal, you said the attitudes are pretty common across demographic groups. You talked about income groups, but it's true across most demographic groups, right? But how about behavior? Are you seeing behavior shifts across the various demographic groups?
Well, in some categories we're seeing a difference. You mentioned gasoline earlier on, for instance. So for those with slightly less money, we've got 33% of them saying that they're going to have to pull back on how much or who they buy from. Interestingly, 23% of those earning $125,000 or more are saying the same thing.
Okay, they're saying that, but do you see true behavior shifts?
So we think we are in some categories, without a doubt, where people are buying less. Let's not assume that just because you've got more money that you've got more disposable income. So there may be pressures on the outside. But we're also hearing anecdotally, and I think it is being stirred up by what we see as we go into the elections, this idea that somehow this is not fair and you should question who you are spending your money with. I think that is actually becoming a bit of an issue now.
Yeah, and it's hard. This is a hard thing to thread as a marketer, because on one hand, you don't control the cost of goods of your product. You do the best you can to negotiate. You're trying to find alternate suppliers. You consider, pack size changes. All the tools, but those tools only go so far, because it's really a price-value equation. And so you need to come back to either creating real value, or at least having it appear as real value. So let's go to the first, creating real value, because it's not just price, it's price value, right? How are some ways that marketers can create real value?
So we go back to the things that have worked before. Sure, we're living in a world of AI and digital and personalization and all those things, but to try and understand the customer's needs and serve them, there are probably three ways that would rise to the top. One is essentially managing the price you pay versus the reward you get. So how do you create bundle offers? How do you do price promotions? How do you do packaging alternatives? So those sorts of things.
How about quality?
Well, I think that is a very good question, because you can, of course, reduce the cost of input and reduce the quality. You're going to have to pay for that in the long term, though. So if people buy you for quality, then you got to be careful, because somebody else is coming into the market if you start to devolve. So,
let's just say that at the current price, which is inflated from, whatever it was a couple of years ago, 20%, the price value is now perceived to be out of whack. But if you actually made a product improvement such that it increased your cost 10% more, you could potentially price even greater and have a better price value image. So in other words, don't just think one way, let's cost reduce a product. Let's think about the price value equation and image and reality of the product quality.
Yeah, product innovation in some sectors is really important. Look at what we've just heard from Apple announcing their new phone. Look at Sony launching the PlayStation version 5 Pro. People are putting the prices up for those as well. $700 for a gaming console, amazing. Equally, the coffee I just bought at a very large coffee shop across the road for almost $10, including the tip.
You just paid $10 for a cup of coffee?
Where the quality is exactly the same. The one thing that made me pay $10 and not mind it was the service level. So, You can add quality there as well. But yeah, $10 is more than I earned in a week in my first job.
But your point is really important, which is it's price value with all the elements of the marketing mix.
Yeah, and the value, sure, it's the price and it's the product and it's the way you position it and it's the competitive environment you stay in, but it's the customer experience and the customer satisfaction that is also there. So essentially, the user experience and the quality of the product, the literal quality, what goes into it, most consumers will have a point of view on that, even if it's not a conscious one, it's a subconscious one, and we judge it.
And product ingredients enhanced by service, depending on what business you're in, it can change that impression as well.
Yeah. So that's one level. Manage that price value equation. The second is manage the perceived price value equation. So how do you build a story around your product? We'll call it a brand. How does the brand add to the value of what you perceive the product to be? So I buy a can of soda, what's in it will cost X, but why should I pay X plus 7 or X plus 5 or X to the power of 10? It's because of what my mind does that says, that to me is worth it.
But in order for a marketer or a company to have that happen, you have to believe that marketing works. And I know that sounds silly, because I know we have a lot of people listening who are CMOs going, well, I didn't need to listen to these two guys to tell us that. But there are a lot of companies, including consumer, well-known consumer products companies, who sort of have forgotten that lesson and don't believe it. They cut advertising, they cut promotion spending when you get into these periods, when in fact you should be betting on or finding the right things that'll move the needle.
Yeah, so you can, especially in big consumer packaged goods companies, you can see evidence that those who spend during a period of turmoil, those who spend on marketing promotions, will benefit on average for 8 to 10 years in terms of a market share gain versus those that turn it off. A sector, we went through COVID in the sector of soft drinks. One company spent, one company turned off. 10 years later, they'll still be fighting to get that share back.
Yeah, and this is a really important point, because it's not a static market, and market share tends to be relatively sticky. And so if you can take an opportunity through some level of crises, however created, or some level of change or displacement, you can move market share.
Yeah, and it may last for a long time, because the things you did during a period of, like you say, pressure, for instance, for perhaps younger families on lower budgets, if I serve them well in this time, how will they serve me back when things get better for them?
We're talking about inflation in the marketplace and how it's impacting consumer spending. We're going to take a short break and be right back.
What does the future of work mean for your employees? How will your company navigate ESG? Will there be a global recession? At the Conference Board, our experts translate the latest research and economic analysis into insights and real-time problem solving for your organization. Membership at the Conference Board provides your team with an assortment of knowledge, from economics, marketing and communications, ESG, public policy, and human capital. As a member, you'll have access to our center experts, member-exclusive events, data and benchmarking tools, and peer sharing that will help you understand the present and shape the future. Consider becoming a Conference Board member today by visiting www.conference-board.org.
Welcome back to C-Suite Perspectives. I'm your host, Steve Odland from the Conference Board, and I'm joined today by Ivan Pollard, the center leader of our Marketing and Communications Center at the Conference Board. Okay, so we were talking about marketing working. We were talking about the importance of the product mix, the price value, the service aspects of it. That's more product-based. Talk about services, the marketing of services, and because those prices have risen as well.
Those prices are rising too, and again, to reiterate your point, Steve, when prices rise and people's mindset changes, opportunities are there because people are more likely to change their provider or their service provider. So in the service industry, just that customer experience, I think, becomes even more important. How you are treated, how you are interacted, how your needs are met. And of course, they're not always done by a human being these days. The rise of AI in customer service has been well documented. But for service industries, it's actually just as important to maintain the marketing perception out there. The levers and the channels may be different, but the concept, marketing and promotion, is still vital.
And hence, you have to be thinking about not only what does the consumer or your customer think, but how do they feel and how they're treated, and that whole gestalt, particularly in a service industry or restaurants or in any kind of retail experience, that sometimes builds huge loyalty, huge price value. So it's not just the price per se, it's the whole gestalt of the experience.
Yeah, and as you say, it can pay back over time. Now is a great opportunity to demonstrate that you are different and you are better. Over time, that difference will pay you back tenfold or 20-fold or 5-fold, but it's going to pay you back. And in different sectors, of course, you may do that in different ways. But, when I'm in trouble and when I'm down as a consumer or a customer, and you come with a value proposition that delivers in a way that I wasn't expecting and I'm grateful for, I'm gonna become a more loyal customer over time.
Well, and this whole again, it's feeling, and that is a multifaceted emotion for sure. And we're not going to get into every aspect of the psychology of that, but it is about belonging. It's about an experience, and when the rest of your world is under price pressure and you're struggling, going and getting relief, it's kind of like you want to go to a spa and you want to have some relief from this, and you're willing to do that because it's an indulgence, or go have some Haagen-Dazs ice cream, rather than skipping because it's just a little a little experience. So you have to think about how people are feeling and how to create just a little bit of a sense that's different and that adds to that brand image.
Yeah, and so the image is one thing, the experience is another. Those two things must work together. They cannot be counter. So you're right, it's a very well documented fact, the red lipstick effect, that when the economy gets really tight and people don't have as much money, spending something on a luxury that doesn't cost thousands or tens of thousands of dollars but just costs a few dollars is a very well documented experience. So I think when you put those two things together, when I'm under pressure and I get a sense that a brand hears that, senses it, feels it, cares for me, and does something about it, bang.
Yeah, and that last point of cares for you, I mean, that's shown up, consistently in your research over time. It's this brand or this company really cares about me, and that there's a lot of ways to show that. Talk about some ways that if you're a marketer, if you're CEO of a company, how can you demonstrate to your consumer or your customer that you care?
Well, I think first of all, being able to really hit the nerves that are pinging for them, to recognize it and to touch them in a way that says, look, I get it, I hear it, we're going to do something about it. Point one, the insight. The second point then is to find a way of turning that insight into some action that genuinely helps them. So it could be about the price value equation. It could be about meeting them where they are. It could be about, buy now, pay later. It could be about interest rates. All sorts of things can be done to help. It varies from place to place, but to just go back to the 4 Ps, and I'll add 2 on. So the product, keep it. Don't degrade the quality just so you can save your input price, especially if you put your prices up at the same time. Promotion, tell them what you stand for and why they should be interested. Price, promotion. The product itself, keep the quality up, and then the places that you show up. So, make sure that you're available. Don't make somebody go an extra 3 miles in their car to find you. Do the deals that get you on the shelf, or provide your service employees with the opportunity to connect. There are two others that I would add on to the famous 4 Ps. One is proximity. So today, with data and with technology and the ability to customize and serve things to people, how do you get closer to their moment of need and help them? So that's the 5th P. And then the other one is purpose. So how do you stay true at a time like this to the purpose of your company, and that purpose serving your customers and your consumers? Do not neglect that, because whilst it might seem easy to run away from that and go and tackle some of the more pressing things, in the long run you have to stay true to your purpose.
Well, and we have to realize we're in a multi-constituency world, customers, employees, owners, community, and you really have to balance all of that. And I think as long as you keep all of that in the right balance, it may not be perfect for any one of those constituencies for some period of time, but if you keep it in the right balance and you take care of your customer, over the long run, as you said, market share should gain, and hence profitability should return, and that's kind of where we're sitting here. So it's this isn't a forever thing. You grow your way out of these things. Inflation won't run at this rate forever. It's already coming down. So it can sit here. Prices can sit here for a bit and then start to feel like they're more of a value as wages grow. So a lot of time heals a lot of things too, as long as you've taken care of them and made them feel right through this process.
Yeah, and you sit there and you go, we're not playing for just this week's share. It's over the long arc of time. How do you win and keep a customer happy? It's a time now to win. It's also a time to keep your customers happy. And it may be a bit of a misconception about young people are more biddable and old people are more established in their habits. It's true in some categories, as I mentioned earlier, like gasoline, for instance. But in the categories of things like packaged food, clothing and apparel, interesting things like beverages, actually roughly 40% of the under 35s, the 35 to 55 and the 55 plus, 40% are saying they're up for changing.
So in your study, you're seeing some consistency across age groups, which means it's really a shared experience right now. Any other points that has come out in your study that you'd like to share with us?
So I think the interesting question that was asked was, I'm so upset about the prices that have gone on, but I can't change. So actually, you get more people saying that in many categories than you get saying, I'm so upset I am changing. So we talked about beverages and packaged food, but in things like medical care or insurance. Diapers, yeah. I could never change a diaper, Steve, no. It was beyond me.
No, you still need to swaddle that baby regardless of the price.
Without doubt. Oh, did I know that?
Yeah.
Dang it. Well, when I get home, I'll have to act on that piece of advice.
Well done.
But the idea that actually in some of those categories where it's harder to change, you might be leaving people open to resentment and a feeling of being not heard and not cared for that is going to come and bite you. So even in those categories where we've only got 20% of people saying they're in the market to change, beware.
Yeah. So the rules or the insights that you're bringing forward is start with being aware, start with watching what's going on, start with understanding that it's stressful for people, and think about ways to market your way out of it through adding value to the product and or the experience and or the service. It make people feel better such that they come out the other side and you're able to gain market share and hold that for a long period of time. Did I get it right?
Spot on.
Well done. Ivan Pollard, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Steve.
And if you'd like to read more about the insights from the Marketing Communications Center, log on to our website at www.tcb, that's the conference board, tcb.org, and click on the Marketing Communications Center. And thanks to all of you for listening in to C-Suite Perspectives. I'm Steve Odland, and this series has been brought to you by the Conference Board.
You have been listening to C-Suite Perspectives, a podcast by the Conference Board.